Hey, so welcome to this episode of the Spiritual Seekers podcast with Mariana Louis of Persephone's sister. I found Mariana, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I was making dinner and I just heard in my head, look up divine feminine and the patriarchy, like those words specifically. And that's how I looked in YouTube and I found you there. So,
yeah.
And then I binge watched a whole bunch of YouTube of your videos, which I thought were awesome and so helpful. So thank you for coming on to the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I guess, why don't you explain to everyone what you do, what your focus is, what your passion is, just real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a tarot reader. I'm an archetypal tarot reader specifically. And so I work with private clients, and then I also teach seminars on a range of spiritual topics, including the divine feminine and tarot and hermeticism and mysticism and just a bunch of stuff. So a lot of people come to me through the divine feminine through YouTube very specifically, which is delightful to me that people are watching those, because when I was making them, I was like, no one's going to watch this. Who cares? And the people care. So it's great. I did my graduate work, my master's thesis on archetypes of the divine feminine. So I've been a lot of my stuff that I put out there, my videos on YouTube and stuff are kind of oriented towards that study, which is really good to be able to use some of the research you spent a few years on, actually be, useful for other people. So
now, did you go to college for psychology? What led you in that direction?
So my bachelor's degree was in music. I actually started off as a musician, as a professional singer. I sang opera, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, and I loved it. But I got really tired of just that struggle, that kind of lifestyle of constantly not having, a container of what my life looks like. And you never know what job you're going to get, where you're going to be in the country, these kinds of things is a lot. And so I decided to shift into philosophy, essentially, because that was a realm of study I always wanted to pursue. But because music is so specific, it was just, I didn't have time and room for that. So I paused my music career and went and got my graduate degree in Western intellectual traditions, which was a combination of philosophy and comparative literature and just transformations of how people thought in the Western world. And it was very, very cool. And I studied a lot of occultism that was for some reason available in the program at that time with those teachers. And I had already known about the tarot and was, learned the tarot before this, but that really got me very interested on how to make this kind of reclaim what it was, the archetypal essence of the cards, and bring that back and just work in that way. It's been a really cool journey.
I know. I never heard of the archetypal version, of tarot. I'm peripherally interested in tarot, but never enough to full on dive into it.
Yeah.
But I thought that was neat. And what is it? The Carolyn Mace, she's got a deck of cards that are
Carolyn Miss. Yeah.
Miss. I never know. But yeah. And because with past lives and how there's certain archetypes with, that are commonly held for just people incarnating.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, but I never thought about it as being combined with the tarot. So, and that's taking on the influence of Jungian direction. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, Jung is one of these kind of fascinating thinkers that everybody if you're on some kind of spiritual journey, you've at some point come across a Jung quote and you're like, wow, this is really interesting and smart. But it's hard to get into him sometimes because he was a psychologist. He was he was writing academically. And so he was writing in German. And so it's just very dense and hard to access. But Jungian thinking is basically just exploring the psychology of soul. What does it mean to kind of approach our personalities, our worlds, our spiritual development through this kind of archetypal lens of saying the soul is trying to unite with our consciousness. That's kind of the idea. The unconscious and the conscious are trying to find a way to communicate with each other. And I actually found Jung because my grandfather was like an armchair philosopher, and he had like 10,000 books in his house, like literally they were everywhere all the time. Like his whole attic was just filled, stacked with books. And he passed away when I was a kid, but in my early 20s, I was just up in his attic looking at like what books are here, and I found Jung, and I had heard about him, and so I picked up The Undiscovered Self, which is one of Jung's last works, and very, very short and readable, actually. So I recommend that one. And I was just like, oh man, this changes everything. And I just totally fell into this passion for understanding the archetypal world and investigating what the unconscious is and how we make magic from that, and what synchronicities are, and how we can individuate, which is really the whole point of it. So that was the journey for me, and I think everybody should read a little bit of Jung. That's my personal biased opinion.
I don't remember which book I got of his. It's still in my bookcase. I got it when I was in college. I got like the bookstore. It was like on a discount thing. And I was like, I was so drawn to it. And I felt like I was going to really dive into and learn him well, but I never really did. But I know it as something that's cool, and I know that that's awesome, but I don't really know that much deeper on it. So I thought it was cool that you like know it well. And
yeah, it's hard. It's like a little bit hard to get into because, like, as I said, it's dense and it's very psychological.
It's so deep, and I remember just feeling like it was like refreshing because it was so deep, and I was like, yes, this is like my realm. So yes, I need to like pull that book out and actually sit down and read it sometime, because I've been carrying it with me for like 20 whatever years, a long time.
It's probably waiting for the right moment. There's probably like something about it. It's like, no, not yet. You got to wait.
Yeah.
It'll really hit here.
I'll have to tell you later which book it is, because I really don't remember even the title. Then you've been doing tarot like your whole life, or like since you were a teenager, or what?
Yeah, no, actually I had a late start with the tarot compared to a lot of people. My mom gave me her deck that she had. My mom's a hippie. She had a few decks in the 70s, I think. And she gave me her deck, and I like sort of played with it a little bit, but it scared me when I was younger because my mom told me that's how she found, like, it was the tarot that told her that her husband at the time, her ex-husband, had been cheating on her. And she was like, it's very dangerous. Like, don't mess with it unless you really want to learn something. So I was very scared of it. I didn't play with it a lot. And then I actually went on a yoga retreat at some point in my mid-20s, and they were giving tarot readings, and I got one, and I was like, oh, wow, this is different from what I thought it was. Like, this wasn't scary. This was very illuminating. And the last card that was pulled was the High Priestess. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is like, that energy was just clicked so quickly. And so I dived in hardcore, and like, that's all I did for like 3 months was learn the tarot, and learned it very quickly. And then just worked with it for a few years, worked with it while I was getting my degree. And after that, after a couple more years of just kind of experimenting with how to use it archetypally, I put together my tarot practice and started giving professional readings for people.
Was this your own idea, or were you like patterning after an example that you learned by the archetypal tarot?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's definitely books out there on archetypes and tarot. There are Jungian thinkers who have already, like, they know that obviously the tarot has this archetypal level. I haven't met a lot of people who do it as a practice, who are specifically readers for the people who read archetypally. I'm sure they're out there, but I don't know. I'm only me and a couple other people that I've seen on Instagram do it. So I don't know, maybe we're kind of at the head of a movement, maybe.
That's neat. Yeah. I was curious, and like, because I don't know, I'm not that deeply entrenched in the tarot world to know, are there like different subsects of like, ways of thinking and ways of approaching it,
I think that because tarot has only become very popular as like a therapeutic form, like a therapeutic container in the last maybe like 10 years. Like before that, it was, you wouldn't just think, oh, I'm going to get it. Yeah. You wouldn't go get a tarot reading just because you're having like a rough week. But now it's like, oh, I'm like stressed out. Let me get a tarot reading. It's like a normal thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's only been in the last like decade. So I think just like even having the concept of saying we can be more specific about what this is serving is probably a newer kind of idea. Like there are people out there who are just tarot readers for like, couples or families. And there are people who are tarot readers who just do, predictive tarot reading or astrological tarot reading or all sorts of things. I find it very interesting. It's kind of developing right now.
No, it's amazing. Like how, like whenever people are like, do you do tarot? And I'm like, not really, because I can't call myself a tarot reader compared to what tarot is. And like, I couldn't do it justice. Like I can pull the cards and we can look up the meanings, but I'm not going to just instantly know and channel you a whole thing. But so I'm more, comfortable in like the oracle card world. But when I was younger, my dad told me tarot was tools of the devil.
They all do.
Yeah. And so I was scared of them. And my friend gave me a deck when I was 19 and she's like, this is right up your alley. And I'm like, oh, really? You think so? I don't know. And then I played with them and I loved them. And I think they have you, I don't remember even, but like maybe like in the beginning of the booklet, it says like to find your card or whatever, like it's like based on numerology for your birth year or for your, the current year you're in, but the two cards that resonated the most or that I was guided to because of the breakdown. I'm an 11 numerology number, but like I broke it down to 2. So 2 was High Priestess. And so I think I already knew I had a connection to High Priestess, but then I would have a really strong connection to her and I'd find her all the time, like literal magic, where I would fan out the deck and like pull her out of thin air kind of. And I'd be like, oh my God, now I'm scared. Yeah. So, and it was like all healers are drawn, that's our
High Priestess is the card. Yeah. I honestly think this is like, a little bit out there, but I honestly think that that's intentional. Like the High Priestess is a very powerful, active archetype right now. And so in the collective, so she's like almost showing up for all the people that she's trying to call and like pull out of the world and be like, hey, come, we got to do this thing. I have a message. So I've heard that so many times. The High Priestess comes
me too.
And I'm like, whoa. Yeah.
I know now that I do this work all the time, like I do hear that back at me all the time too, with people that are fellow healers. And like, I remember going to one of my spiritual teachers when I first met her and I was like, there was this card that I always pulled. She's like, let me guess, High Priestess. I was like, yeah, how'd you know? It's like,
always.
Yeah.
It's in the zeitgeist, it's in the collective. It's like, I really think that she's kind of, because when we think about archetypes, we can actually think about them rising and descending out of unconsciousness and back into unconsciousness. The idea of unconsciousness is that, we can think of it in the Freudian sense of like, oh, I have trauma that I've repressed and I'm not remembering, I'm not connecting to. That's a very personal kind of unconsciousness. But Carl Jung theorized that there's a collective unconsciousness, and that's where the archetypes live. So an archetype that might be very, very important for people 200 years ago might not be as resonant today. They kind of move in and out of our collective like thinking. And I really think that the High Priestess is like the archetype of the moment. I think she's really risen up and like she's grabbing a lot of people's attention. And I think it's very cool to like watch it happen. You can almost like proof that the collective unconscious exists because everybody's having the same like really powerful experience with the same archetype and they've never spoken to each other ever. And it's just like that same energy across everybody. It's so cool.
I love it. I know when I opened up my store like a year and a half ago, and as I was decorating and figuring out what was going to, fill the space, I was like, I definitely need to get like something with the High Priestess. And I ordered something off of Etsy and it's like a wooden plaque that's like, a big, huge High Priestess card. And I love it. Like, I love it. It's like in all my images online and stuff, because it's like, yeah, like this is like kind of like the code, like, we're of like mind, like,
yeah. That's my Instagram photo is me as the High Priestess. My husband made that for me a while ago. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. So I have that as my little Instagram photo. I like it a lot.
Just now I looked up at I have like a mirror in front of me up here, and it's like, I went to a New Year's Day yoga thing a couple of years ago, and she handed out a deck of cards for us all to pull cards. and keep the card, and I pull out freaking High Priestess, you know, and
Of
it's
course.
like, you know, and it was like another type of deck. It doesn't look like the traditional, but there it was, you know, it's like an archangel deck connected to the tarot. So it's
That's
just,
awesome.
it's just like, I love it. I love how it happens. Like, I don't know. It's just amazing.
It really is.
You also speak to like witches, and you make the witch thing not seem like, you know, of course now at this point, like, I don't think that people are as like put off by witchy things, but there's still a lot of people that are, but I feel like I love the way you're just like so plain about it. So like what's an example of like witchy things that you're into, or like when did it begin, or anything witch related that you want to dive into?
Yeah, I struggled with calling myself a witch for a while, because not even because it has a negative connotation, just because it is a big statement to make in the world, to say you're a witch. I have family now that I think I've recently discovered my like YouTube channel or something, and they're like, "What is this?" Like very uncomfortable. Like, "You're a what?" So that's, you know, that's kind of one of the reasons you don't like get very loud about it sometimes. But I started identifying as a witch the more that I immersed myself in the idea of the divine feminine and the archetype of the divine feminine, because I did some work around Lilith, and for my thesis, and also just like I have a video on YouTube on Lilith, and it's like I did like a lot of research around her, and
Lilith being the first woman, Adam, you know, whatever. So you want
the
to
first witch,
explain that?
Yeah. So Lilith is a very interesting figure. She originates from Babylonian mythology. She's in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and she's kind of, her name is like scattered around the ancient world a little bit. And she was the handmaiden of the goddess Inanna, or Ishtar, depending on, you know, what side you're from. And so she was like her second, you know, she was like her caretaker. She was like seen as this very like sexual being, was very liberated, very powerful. And there was like older myth about her, you know, having some kind of resonance in the Bible. And in the Middle Ages, there was a rabbinical thinker named, he wrote a book called The Alphabet of Ben Sirah, which is a commentary on the Bible. And he basically said, "Oh, we got the myth wrong. What really happened is that Lilith was Adam's first wife, and they were made at the same time of the same earth. So rather than Eve being made out of Adam's rib, they came at the same time, and they were going to lay together. And Adam said, 'Okay, I have to be on top.' And Lilith said, 'No, we're made of the same earth at the same time. No one's on top. Like we're equals in everything.' And he was like, 'No, you're supposed to be subordinate to me.' And so they called God, and they're like, we're having an issue. We're having a marital, you know, fight here. And God said, yeah, you have to be subordinate to Adam. That's how this is supposed to go. And Lilith said, 'There's no way I'm going to do that. And I'd rather be cursed for all of eternity to be this demon than to be subordinate to anyone.' And so she like flew away and like became this like witch. And so we even get the imagery of like the flying woman, like on the like sort of like that broomstick image, you know? And so it's interesting because I think that text was actually written as like, it's like a warning about like, you know, really independent women can be a problem and they're evil. Like, look at this story. But we've reclaimed it now, and we're like, this is awesome. This is like the idea that, you know, this is feminism, in a sacred feminism. And so Lilith is such a powerful figure because she really symbolizes the insistence on her own agency, and also this incredible power she has that doesn't get taken away from her when she's cast out of Eden. It just changes into something we see as demonic. And so that's kind of like what that archetype of the witch is. It's originally a person of incredible
woman in her
autonomy.
power.
Yeah, a woman with power. And so the only way, there's a quote by this Jungian named Mary Ayers, and she says, the only way for the patriarchy to make safe connection to the female, the feminine, is to make it the other, to make it the like evil, dark other, and that's the only way to have safe relationship with it, because otherwise it's too threatening.
Right.
And so that's kind of what Lilith symbolizes, is the witch, but the witch is actually just a woman of power. So the more I went into that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm very comfortable with this word, because that's exactly what I want to bring to the world. So
Right. I know. And that's like I was doing a deep dive into the divine feminine for like the last like 2 years or so. And, just how everything's inverted, how everything is bad. That's
yeah.
of, female strength, or like the Friday the 13th. And,
Mhm.
and I think that's what started it. It was probably like, seeing some meme about Friday the 13th and being like, wait, what?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's just like like so many things. It's just ridiculous. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's very interesting that like the only way to have a relationship with the feminine as an archetype, was to either make it evil or to make it powerless. Because
Mhm.
if it has power, then it's challenging the
Mhm.
patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
There's an automatic challenge of saying, well, why are you on top? This doesn't make sense, does it?
Right.
And so that's the only way to keep the system going as is, to say women are either powerless and like these meek princesses that need to be saved all the time,
Mhm.
or they're evil,
Yeah.
and that's it. And so it's very, very fascinating, working on reclaiming the feminine, and like going back into the ancient myths, and going back into, like even the image of the princess is something that a lot of people are mad about today. 'Cause, like, I don't want to like connect to that. That's helpless and
Mhm.
overly, like, their beauty is exaggerated, and these things that are just male visions of femininity. But I actually think that there is, that part of that too is the recognition of beauty and purity in the feminine that is natural to it. That's something that can be part of the divine feminine too. It's just too exaggerated, right? And it
Right.
doesn't have the opposite too, of like, but there's also power, and there's also like earthiness and all that stuff. So it's really interesting to be able to go back and look at things with fresh eyes and say, well, what can we actually save from this that gives us information, both the divine feminine really deeply is.
So you were talking about this when you were working with clients and stuff, and then you decided you needed to like create like a thing that you kept teaching people about. Is that how your courses came about? Were you
Yeah, that's, well,
yes.
I had a lot of this like in my head for a long time, because I had been working on my thesis, and a lot of this was part of my thesis and just my own personal study. And after I've been like doing my tarot practice for a while, I was like, I wonder if somebody would be interested in learning some of the things I've learned. And so I tried out like a seminar, and to see how it went, and it went really well, and people were really receptive to exploring things. So then I started more, carefully kind of making good courses, good seminars, or I got a lot of information, and it's been very, like rich for me too, because I can continue studying and continue learning myself, and like get
Yeah.
even deeper in everything, and then be able to bring that back to people. Because I think the most difficult thing is everyone wants to learn the truth about these archetypes, and about divine femininity and mysticism. All these things are really interesting to us today, but it's really hard to get to it, because it's just buried in different books and ancient myths, and it's like, how do you find this? And so I love being the person to do that, to
Yeah.
like collect it and
Right.
like bring it to people and be like, okay, I found it for you, let's talk about it. This is now the good part, like we actually go into it.
I know, to make it, to simplify it for others.
Yeah.
Okay, here's just like
Yeah.
what you need to know. Like
Yeah.
last year, I think I had a reading with someone, and she's like, you should look up, Sophia, like goddess Sophia. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. And like that brought me to like a whole book about the divine feminine, and then another book. So I was like reading, like there's some book called Magdalene Mysteries. I have it like next to
Yeah.
it. And then what's the other one?
Is
Uh,
it by Megan Watterson?
yeah, and this is also a Return of the Divine Sophia. That was cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Megan Watterson one, I think this author is friends with her, but like
Oh yeah, yeah.
it was a different one. But like, but
Yeah.
I've read that one too.
Uh-huh.
So it's just like so interesting.
Yeah.
Is there, what do you like? Sophia is basically just like feminine goddess like energy, because it's like there's not like a straight answer necessarily, but like she's not like wasn't like a person, she's more just like a concept, or like
yes and no. She was a concept first. She comes from the Bible and the Book of Wisdom. So in the Book of Wisdom, a lot of this has to like, it starts with like translation theory and everything. It's fascinating, but basically Sophia was wisdom in the Book of Wisdom. So if you read the Book of Wisdom, it's in first person a lot, which is weird. So because it's not like an actual like prophet or something speaking, it's wisdom speaking. Okay. And it's in the first person, and so parts of it at least. And so Sophia in the original, it was, you know, Sophia who was speaking. So in a way, she was kind of like this emanation of divine energy, like a personification of wisdom as a deity of some sort. Some like religious, some theologians will call her a hypostasis, which is basically like a brief personification of a certain side of God. And so she kind of already had that divine energy then. But what really made her a clear goddess was the Gnostics. So the Gnostic tradition is a Christian tradition where they were like seeking like mystical knowledge through the Christian thinking. Yeah. And so she actually was like an angel to them, kind of. She was an aeon, and she had certain power, and she was like the creator of the co-creator of the world. It's this whole very, very interesting mythology about her. She's the fall of the world at the same time. It's interesting. It's fascinating.
I know it's a lot because I couldn't find like a clear answer, and I was like, I'm like trying to teach about it. I'm like, I don't even know if I know what I'm talking about, you know.
It's like it like winds through so much, and so in the most of what we have on Sophia comes from the Middle Ages and the Renaissance period, because at that time period there were a lot of alchemists and occult thinkers and magicians and stuff who were kind of coming up. And they found Sophia, like, I guess, in the Bible or in this Gnostic work or whatever. And they were like, oh, she's a goddess. Yeah, we got it. And they were kind of like, they didn't call her a goddess specifically, of course, because it is still the Renaissance. But they were like, oh, Sophia is the one who has all this power. And she's the one who like guides us in our alchemical work. And she's the one who like is the one who actually administers God's power. And like, she just became this whole thing at that time period. And so she's just fascinating. And she's also the high priestess. I mean, it's the same, she's the same archetype, just now as the high priestess dressed as her. So she's wonderful.
You know, I was curious because I was like, help me out with this, because like I just overwhelmed by it, you know?
Yeah, that was one of the seminars I gave last year, actually. On Sophia, and it was like packed. I had like so much information because it's a really dense topic, but so fascinating.
How did the seminars work? How do you offer them?
So they're usually like one day thing, but you can always purchase them afterwards, usually afterwards, but they're to watch at your convenience. You don't have to come live or anything like that, because we're in the 21st century now and everything is on the internet. So I'll like compile, like it's usually about 90 minutes. And I'll just compile a lot of information, give a lecture, we'll discuss it, we'll ask questions, we'll kind of like dive into exploring this a little bit deeper. And then I always accompany that with like a reading list to walk away with, so you can like continue to learn on your own, and like notes and stuff, so you don't have to like worry about remembering it. You know, that's one of the things, like there's always so much information, you got to watch things more than once, or like have a notebook or something like you're in class. So those have been so great. So most of the past seminars I've done are still on my website that you can get whenever you want if you're interested in something, and watch in your own time.
And you're having something coming up soon that you're working on, like this summer, did you say?
Yeah, so this summer I'm going to be launching the Archetypal Tarot School. So the idea behind that is that I'm compiling all of the study I've done on archetypes and of tarot. It's a lot of books. I have like a stack of like 14 books over here that I'm like currently reading, or rereading even. And I'm putting together this really comprehensive course on how to read tarot archetypally. And what it's really exciting about this is not only looking at the major arcana, which is where a lot of people get very limited, just looking at the 22 cards that are the most important, but it's looking at all the different cards through an archetypal perspective, like understanding the archetypal meaning of the cups and the pentacles and swords and wands, and also understanding the relationship between complexes and reversals and court cards, and the mystical like act of individuating and how that is reflected in the path of the major arcana, and creating a tarot philosophy, and how to like prepare yourself for a reading, get into what Jung would call the baissement du nouveau mental, which is like this lower state of consciousness to access more psychic depth. And it's going to be like a whole thing. I'm very excited about it. And so that's, the dates aren't set exactly yet. So, that'll happen very soon, but it'll start sometime in June. And it'll go for 9 weeks. It's a bit of a intensive.
Yeah. Right.
And what's also exciting about this too, is that there's a little bit, it's also can be self-guided. So it's not going to necessarily be live lectures you have to come to. I'm going to put together videos so that people can like watch it on their phone when they're, and like shorter, like multiple short videos so people can do it in their own time. And
less
then
overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll have like a weekly meeting that people can come to and discuss it with other people, practice with fellow classmates, and so it's going to be a really rich program. Very excited about it.
That's awesome. I've already directed some tarot friends to follow you on Instagram. So, and I just thought of another friend. I'm like, oh, I gotta tell her. So yeah, because it's like I said, I'm like, I can't. Like, it's not that I can't, but that's not. I'm working on bodies. But people,
it's a lot. Yeah.
So, but I totally really respect it and appreciate it, and it's exciting, and it's really cool to like hear the depth of it all. It's not just random, like there's
it's not just learn like 78 keywords and you're done. That's why it's a like a multi-year thing to really learn the tarot. It doesn't like I learned all the meanings in like 3 months. I memorized it, and then I actually learned it over the course of 3 years. Like it's a deep thing. I feel the same way about astrology. My friend Christina Farella, she's a fantastic astrologer, absolutely phenomenal. And we'll be on the phone and she'll just be like, well, this is what's happening astrologically right now. And I was like, nope. I've read the books. I've tried really hard. I just can't.
I know, like your brain has only got one portion for things. And I know, like I have a friend who's an astrologist also, and she'll be like, well, duh, blah, 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 just cross this and into that. And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I know that like your people like light up when you say those words, but I have no idea what you're saying. And I have a client that I see pretty often, and she gives me the updates when I see her. And it's good because it applies to that day, but I don't retain that. I can't understand it, can't explain it,
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's great. You learn like the basics, and that's lovely, but you don't actually get astrology until you know all the complexity, and like you have to, that's a whole journey. And I'm like, you know what, maybe one day when I don't have anything to do, I can like immerse myself for a month and like really getting there, but not yet. Right now.
It's helpful to have people you can lean on that are experts in certain things, and that can be enough, So
I just trust Christina, and you just tell me what's going on.
Over. Totally, I'm with you. If people wanted to follow you, like where could they find you? What is your stuff?
So I'm on Instagram as at Persephone's sister. Be careful on Instagram because there's scammers everywhere on Instagram right now. So Persephone's sister with one S, Persephone's, and then Sister. There's not like 3 S's in there. Why
that as a name? Like, what was that connection?
That's a great question, actually. My sister's name is Persephone.
Okay.
Okay. So I've always been like, my whole life, people have always called me Persephone's sister because she's far more popular and likable than I am. So I just was like always known as that. Like people didn't know my name. I was Persephone's sister. And then when I started my tarot, work, and I realized how much the high priestess was connected to Persephone, and I just was like, oh, this is perfect. Like this is just me. This is who I am.
Okay.
So,
I thought it was connected to that one of those archetypal figures. I didn't realize.
Well, it all just kind of like
it is
met. Like it just all works. So there's that, and I'm also on YouTube. also
Mhm.
Persephone's Sister on
Yeah.
YouTube.
And you do such a good
And
job. Like, you're so concise, you're so smart, and you're just, and you're just easy to listen to and relate to. So
thank you. I really
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
When I started YouTube, I was like, when I was like 23, I was like, I want to do YouTube channel, and I was like first learning about Jung, and I was like, this would be so cool. And when I actually started it, I was a lot older than 23, but when I actually started, I was like, wow, this is so much work. I had no idea how much work it was. And so I put a lot of effort into it. I'm a touch of a perfectionist. So it
Yeah.
really means a lot when people are actually like, oh, you do good work. I'm like, oh, good, thank God, because it's so much effort.
And you're
So
funny,
I
like,
appreciate it.
because you live in the city, and like you're, like the hearing of the cars and the chaos, and then your
Yeah,
cat.
I
Like, I
try
don't
to
know. I just
bring humor
appreciate
into it. Yeah,
it. Be real.
it's
What else can you do?
I know, I find it so dry. I just listen to somebody try to get like a perfect like moment, and they say everything perfectly concisely, and I'm just like, this is not how this is gonna go. I might as well make it like enjoyable to watch this.
Yeah, I know. I think it's fun. You do good.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm on YouTube, and those are the two places to find me, really. And my website is persephonesister.com. And you can check out the seminars and checking out having a session with me, archetypal
Yeah.
tarot session with me, and what that might look like, and if that might be right for you. And that's where you can kind of learn about all the stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It goes after I like watched several videos, and I was like, oh, I'll book a reading with her, sure. And it was funny because it was like in the throes of me opening my second space, and you're like,
Yeah.
you're really busy, but you're really tired, or like I forget what there was like two cards that came up that were like, I don't remember what they were now, but it was like, yeah, it was like a bunch of wands. It was just a bunch of like chaos,
Yeah.
stress, and
Yeah, I
I was
remember.
like,
I
you're
think
happy,
you may have had the Eight of Wands reversed, I think.
Yeah.
It was a little while ago, but yeah, I remember it was like Pentacles and Wands. I was like, there you are. Pentacles and Wands. That's in the heart of it.
It was really cool. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on here. And
Thanks so
and
much.
I'll put all those things in the notes too, so people can look there too. They don't have to just memorize where to find you. So,
Wonderful.
but
This
thank
has been
you
such a
again.
pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, it was always fun to talk to you about these things, because I don't know, I think other people are interested too. So
You definitely are. Yeah, I get a lot of people like DMing me, and they're like, just tell me everything you know. And I'm like, oh, I can't, but
yeah,
I can direct you to a YouTube video.
yeah, like I made a video
Realize.
about that somewhere. Just check my feed. Yeah.
But a lot of people are interested, which is phenomenal, because I think this is important stuff that we're
Well,
talking
yeah,
about.
because the divine feminine's rising, and people are waking up, and they're hungry for this stuff. And it's nice to have someone that's like relatable and like sharp with delivering that information. So thank you for your service.
I appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.